Hey, while we're putting our hands together, let's welcome our online community that watches faithfully. Come on, let them hear you loud and proud, man. And turn to your neighbor this morning and tell them how good they look this morning. Like you look good at church this morning. Turn to your second choice and just stare at them like crazy, like God's still working on you. Week number 2 of Right Between Us. And how many of you realize that relationships are important? Come on, relationships will dictate the course and the quality of your life. And I want to say it like this: you can't get life right and relationships wrong. Come on, somebody. And so what you need is called relational intelligence. Whether it's in your marriage, whether it's in dating, whether it's in friendship. And so this is what I know when it comes to life, man. You can't get life right and relationships wrong. And so at the end of the day, this series is to help you out in this area of relationships, no matter what stage or phase of life that you're in. Maybe you've been married, and maybe you're single. Maybe it's just friendship. There's something that God wants to speak specifically into your situation today. Will you let him? All right, we'll just go home. He ain't gonna let God do nothing. I mean, y'all gotta tell your neighbor, loosen up. Y'all serious? Like, wow, man, this is a tough crowd today. Y'all must be thinking about that Super Bowl or something. All right, Genesis chapter 29. We'll be in verses 16 through 25. Whenever it's on the screen, say, go with it, Pastor. Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The older daughter was named Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. Now, there was no sparkle in Leah's eyes. In other words, Leah was not hot. That's bad when the Bible calls you ugly. I gotta move on. But Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, imagine that. He told her father, I will work for you 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Laban's like, agreed. I'd rather give her to you than anyone else. Stay and work with me. So Jacob worked 7 years to pay for Rachel, but his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him but a few days. That reminds me of the Hallmark Channel. You know, I don't even want to go there. Somebody say, aw. Finally, the time come for him to marry her, and he said, hey, I fulfilled my agreement. Jacob said to Laban, now give me my wife so I can sleep with her. Said no son-in-law to his father has girls. If you're a dad in here and you've got a daughter and some punk comes up to you and is like, give me your, man, I'm going to punch you right in the forehead. Things not to say to potential father-in-laws, people. Tell us how you really feel, Jacob. So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob and he slept with her. Like, I understand, like, back in, like, antiquity, like, back, they were heavily veiled. But you mean to tell me Jacob, you couldn't tell with those eyes, those crazy eyes? It's Leah. But when Jacob woke up in the morning, it was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? Come on, look at your neighbor this morning and tell him to beware of the snare. Come on, beware of the snare. Tell your second choice, you too, beware of the snare. Can we talk about it for a little bit? Shout amen if we can. Yeah, how many of you, by show of hands, are familiar with a man by the name of Vilfredo Pareto? Yeah. Y'all don't know Vilfredo Pareto? sounds like a character from the Lord of the Rings, you know. Vilfredo Pareto is a Italian. That's, by the way, that's the most Italian name I've ever heard of in my life. Oh, Vilfredo Pareto. But Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist that would study nations' wealth. He studied Italy's wealth, and he came up with what's called the Pareto principle. Now, if you've ever heard of Pareto, how many of you heard of Pareto's principle? Okay, nobody has. That's good. That's good. So Pareto's principle is the 80-20 principle. How many of you heard of 80-20 principle? Yeah. And so Vilfredo, through studying economics, discovered that 80% of a nation's wealth is controlled by 20% of the population. And so there's an 80-20 principle. He discovered it in Italy. He discovered it in other nations. But it didn't just stop there. The Pareto's principle it just doesn't apply to wealth. It also applied, he noticed it in agricultural. He noticed that 20% of the crops yielded 80% of the harvest. He noticed it in business, that 20% of your employees are going to yield 80% of the production. 20% of your salespeople are going to dictate and determine 80% of your sales. And so Pareto's principle is a principle that didn't just apply to a nation's economic status, but it also can apply in other areas of life. And it also applies when it comes to relationships. Because this is what we want. This is what Jacob wanted. This is what Jacob thought. Jacob thought he was getting all that with Rachel. Come on, this represents 100 of what we want. This represents the desires, the wish, like the hopes, the Mr., the Mrs. Right. This is what we expect. This is what we go looking for. 100%. We call it all that. And Jacob thought Rachel was all that. But the reality is Rachel wasn't all that. Rachel was most of that. How many of you know Rachel? Rachel had a little bit of crazy in her. I mean, it wasn't all like, Laban, he was crazy. So Rachel, she had most of that. Rachel had beautiful figure, beautiful face, crazy family. And so I dare to say that she would, come on somebody, she was crazy too. Laban, crazy, check. Leah, crazy, check. Rachel, crazy, check. Like, you got to be some level of crazy to think that it's okay to allow your sister to sleep with your fiance on the wedding night. Rachel is not all that. Rachel is most of that, just like the rest of us. Come on, most of that, or some of that. Maybe they're just a little bit of that. And this is what I know when it comes to life, is that there was only one that was all that. His name was Jesus Christ. Come on, all of us have fallen short of the glory of God. In our humanity, we are flawed, and at best, we are most of that. And you would not believe how many people, when they step into relationships and they step into to dating and they step into marriage, they believe the other person is all that. Now, there's only one person that is all that in this room, and that's my wife right there. You're all that. Okay, back to the message. I had to go ahead and, come on, if you're married, just whisper in your spouse's ear, you're all that too. Okay, now we'll get back to biblical principles. But most of that. And what we'll do is we'll put all that type of weight that only God can be in someone else's life, and we'll expect it out of our spouse, we'll expect it out of our significant other. And we put all that type of weight on a most of that type of person. And you would not believe the relationships that are ruined, the relationships that are damaged and destroyed whenever you put a God-sized weight on a fragile, fickle person. And we come up with this idea, oh, they complete me. No, they don't. They're not all that. They're most of that at best. And so we go looking for all that. We go looking for 100. I'm looking for that 100. And at best, they're going to be 80, 20. And Jacob discovered that Rachel wasn't all that. That in our fickle, proud humanity, that we can come up short. And we put God type of weight on our spouse and God type of weight on our relationships and God type of weight on people. And then we find ourselves expecting and all that, right? What we expect and what we experience creates a gap, and it's filled with frustration. Because this is what I know, is that there was only one that was all that. God completes us, not someone else. Come on, I know you heard the Jerry Maguire theology. You complete me. No, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. God completes you. And if you got to beware of the snare. Here's the first snare: unrealistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations. If you step into a relationship and you're trying to put God type of weight on people who cannot carry and was not designed to carry that type of weight, you'll find a gap between what you expect and what you experience, and you'll find that gap filled with frustrations because you stepped into something with unrealistic expectations. You expect somebody to be for you what only God can be for you. Oh, 80-20. It's in our relationships. At best. Come on. We're most of that. We're most of that. And this is what I want to say when it comes to expectations. In every relationship, there's a Rachel. Everybody see Rachel? There's also it's Leah. Oh, no sparkle eye. Come on, and this is so true. It's so true. I mean, just ask anybody that's married for any amount of time, maybe any honeymoon. But I'm not saying that you married two people. Like Jacob married two people. But oftentimes it can feel like you are married to two people. Married people? Come on, sometimes you married to grumpy. Sometimes you married to angry. Come on, man. You know, sometimes we roll over in the morning and you just lay there and you looking and you're like, what did you do with Rachel? You see them all crazy eyes. You're like, Leah has done taken Rachel outside and killed her. Because in every Rachel, there's a Leah. And I'm not just picking on you, I'm not just picking on the women. Come on, and for the sake of just targeting the men. In every Leon, there's a Larry. Y'all know Leon, right? Leon's smooth with it. Leon, you remember, ladies, Leon, he'd talk to you and tell you how pretty you were and how special you are and would talk to you on the phone, and y'all would have intimate conversations and y'all would talk about life and y'all would talk about dreams and you would talk about goals, and he would compliment you and he would hold the door open for you and he would take you out on dates and dinners. But at some point, Like Leon, at some point you discovered that with every Leon, there's a Larry. Larry don't care. Larry's scary. Larry stinks. Larry don't put on deodorant. Larry barely brushes his hair. It's Larry and it's Leah. And see, all dating is, dating, you need to enjoy dating. But dating ain't just for enjoyment and entertainment. You know what? Say go there, Pastor. When you're dating, you're trying to discover and discern. It's Leah. Like you trying to find Leah. Come on, and women, you trying to find Larry. Because Leon don't want you to know about Larry, and Rachel don't want you to know about Leah. But with every Rachel, there's a Leah, and every Leon, there's a Larry, and dating is trying to discern and discover, can I live with Leah and can I live with Larry? Because in everything that you do want, you'll get some things that you don't want, because there's nobody that is all that. They're most of that, some of that, or a little bit of that. And so whenever you get what you do want, can you handle the things that you don't want? Because nobody's all that. Like, you want a new job. Everybody wants a new job, better pay. Yeah, I want, but what about the stress that comes along with a new job? What about the responsibility? What about Leah? What about the long hours? That kind of hurt my arm. I shouldn't do that to y'all. What about the stress and the demand and the time away from your family? Yes, I'm making more money. But anytime I get everything that I do want, there's going to be attached some things that I don't want. Every Rachel, there's a Leah. Every Leon, there's a Larry. Oh, what about marriage? Like, marriage is awesome. Marriage is wonderful. It's awesome. But let me tell you that, like, it ain't all butterflies, unicorns, and there's tension. There's work after the wedding. Come on, somebody. In every marriage, there's a little bit of mess. It's Leah. Do you have realistic expectations? Because nobody but God is going to be all that. At best, they're going to be most of that. And every Rachel has a Leah, and every Larry or every Leon has a Larry. Oh, we want kids. Kids will fix it. Fix what? Like completely insane? Like, really? With kids comes chaos. Come on, somebody. They're a gift from God, yeah. And you should want them. Yeah, but they're chaos. We step into relationships with unrealistic expectations, and we expect people to be all that when all they're designed is to be most of that. God's the only one that's all that. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. We're all fickle. We're all flawed. We all fail. And at the end of the day, when we step into relationships, steps into marriage, and we have unrealistic expectations, we create a gap from what we expect and what we experience, and it's filled with frustration, because behind every Rachel, there's a Leah. From everything that you want, there's something that you don't want. And dating is discerning and discovering, can I live with Leah and Larry? Are the non-negotiables? What side are they on? Are they on this side or are they on that side? If they're on that side, you need to go. You can't live with Leah or Larry. We create unrealistic expectations. But where do you get your expectations? Where do you get your expectations? Where do expectations come from? And where do they come from? Well, it says in Genesis that Laban, that their customs were to marry off. It wasn't their custom to marry off the younger first. It always had to be the older, the firstborn. So your expectations are created by custom and culture. You have a family, and your family has customs. Let me tell you about my family customs. If the Buchanan family sings happy birthday for you, yeah, you're going to remember that. Because we don't do like the Roadhouse, fried chicken, country hot. No. We all have our own song. It's loud. You can't even understand what it is. It's embarrassing. And it's our custom. That's what we do. I mean, we sing happy birthday, but everybody just sings it in their own way. You would think we're half insane. Yeah, customs and culture mold and shape your expectations. When the Bible needs to set the expectations, that nobody's going to be all that but Christ. At best, we can be most of that. My wife informed me that the custom and the culture that she had in her family, she goes, that's not even my, she tried to disown her own customs. I don't know. I'm throwing the red flag. Because the challenge flag. I want to rewind the tape because I know they do something that's called hide the pickle. Hide the pickle. Do they do hide the pickle? Yeah. She tried to disown it. She's like, that's not me, that's my sister. I've been there and I've seen you run into the living room and knock over the Christmas tree trying to find the pickle. Like her sisters and her siblings, they hide the pickle. I'm looking for an actual dill pickle on a Christmas tree. It took me at least 2 years to figure out it's an ornament. I'm like, I thought y'all actually put a dill pickle in the, but they come running in there, find it because you get a special prize, and then you knock over the tree, and then whoever finds the pickle, then they got to argue. Grandma JoJo told you where it was. You were peeking all that in your, oh yeah, and not in your cult, not in your custom. Like that's not you. That's not you. That's somebody else. Where do you get your expectations? Well, they come from your culture, your family, and society. Society has a culture. And Jacob was the only one that thought it was weird. Like, this is strange. You know, Laban didn't think this was strange. Come on. Leah didn't think this was strange. Rachel didn't think this was strange. And when we enter into relationships, whether consciously or subconsciously, your family culture and your family customs have molded, shaped, and fashioned the way that you do relationships. And so we can get into a place where we say, well, my mama did it like this. Why don't you do it like that? And the devil is a lie. And then we fall into the second snare that we got to be aware of is the snare of comparison. Right? Because this is what we'll do. We'll compare, because the day of social media and filters, we'll compare our Leah to someone else's Rachel, and there's 7 filters. And every season has a strength. Every struggle has a strength, and every strength has a struggle. And if we're not careful, we'll compare ourselves amongst ourselves, which isn't wise. And we always compare our Leah to someone else's Rachel, or our Larry to someone else's Leon. And we can find ourselves in a place to where we're not grateful for what we do have, and we always, like, could you imagine if I focused 80% of my energy, 80% of my conversation, 80% of my conflict and my disagreement, like 80% of me complaining about the 20% that my wife isn't. Like, what if I spent my whole time complaining that, my mama cooks pot roast and my wife don't cook pot roast? She said she's going to cook me pot roast, though, because she's seen it in my notes. When she has put my notes in, I was like, I'm going to start writing other things in my notes. I love pot roast. My mama cooked pot roast. Like Sunday, like peas and carrots, and yams and yams and broccoli, like all that stuff, like rice. I like pot roast. My wife, she don't do pot roast. She tried pot roast because she loves me, and like leather. I mean, I'm talking about, it was not, I'm just being honest. It was just bad. It was bad. I was like, this ain't nothing like mama. What if I spent 80% of my time complaining, about the 20% of that she's not? Come on, what kind of tension? And oftentimes we can focus on the 20, and when we focus on the 20, we'll forfeit the 80 because like my grandma, what my grandma does cream corn. Come on, woo. I mean, black-eyed peas. You know who don't do that? My wife. Y'all hungry right about now, aren't you? Yeah, she don't do that. But what she does do, boy, she does fajitas. Amen. Come on, somebody, with them peppers. Oh my God. Like her fajitas are amazing. We should start calling them fetas. I mean, they really are. I'm like, golly, they're so good. You know what else she does well? Enchiladas. Enchiladas. Oh my God, I love them. I love those things. And, you know, it's possible for me to complain about not getting pot roast and it costs me my enchiladas. I could complain about not getting cream corn and black eyed peas and it's going to cost me my fajitas. And a lot of us, when it comes to relationship, will spend time, effort, and energy focusing on what they're not while we'll forfeit what they are. Because behind every Rachel, there's a Leah. And we compare ourselves amongst ourselves. And we put unrealistic expectations on people. You know, the solution for unrealistic expectations is understanding and recognizing the limited capacity of people. It's the limited capacity of people. And we can compare ourselves amongst ourselves. And we can spend a lot of our time, effort, and energy in relationships and our marriages complaining about what they aren't doing, and will neglect the fact of all the things that they do well. Because in every single one of us, and every season, there's strengths and there's struggles. There's strengths that you do see, because that's what we'll project. We project Rachel, but there's struggles that you don't see, that there's Leah's. In every struggle, there's a strength. Come on, that God is molding, shaping, fashioning you, making you stronger. Like there's these things that are hidden within them, and we'll compare ourselves amongst ourselves. And we'll look at all that Rachel has. Like if we're Leah's, we look at what Rachel has, and Rachel is always looking at what Leah has. And so many of us, we play the comparison game in the age of social media. And what we'll do is we'll look at what we don't have. We've been doing that since the beginning, right? At the garden. All these trees you may eat freely from, but this tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Come on, and so Adam and Eve lost sight of all the good things that they had and focused on the one thing that they didn't. And they lost all that they could have, focused on the thing that they didn't. I wonder what you're forfeiting. Come on, because let me just say this, that the fall of humanity is the attack on marriage. Come on, the fall of humanity is Satan's attack on the marriage. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't that Satan was just trying to attack God's trustworthiness or truthfulness. You know what Satan was really attacking? Adam's trustworthiness, like his trust, like being able to Eve being able to trust Adam's word. Because God told Adam, in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. He did not tell Eve. You know who told Eve? Adam did. And so Satan is attacking Adam's trustworthiness. Did he really get that right? Did God really say that? Come on, women, you know when you're man, you're like, is that all? Is that all? Like, there's got to be more. Because you know we don't always get it right when it comes to communication. My wife asked me, well, so what was said? And I'll say like 3 words. She's like, well, you were on the phone for 15 minutes. Is that? And so Satan wasn't just attacking God's truthfulness. He was attacking Adam's trustworthiness. Did he get it right, Eve? Did he really tell you right? And let me just say this, in every marriage between husband and wife, women have a need, their most valuable need, and men have a need, their most valuable need. And the reality is on top of the list of needs, they're usually not the same. As an average, Women, what they desire, their need is for conversation. Like they feel loved, they feel valued. Men, when we take the time to conversate and connect with them and have a conversation about the things that they enjoy, about the things they love, when we talk about gardening and we talk about soil and we talk about the things that my wife is in, she don't care about them bags being 40 pounds and I got to pour all that organic soil into that raised bed. But when we have conversation, she feels loved, she feels valued, she feels special. She needs like conversation, sitting across the table with coffee, talking. It does something to her because women as a whole, as an average, they need to be connected through conversation. It touches a part of their soul that they feel valued. Men, you want to know what our most valuable need is? Just physical. We're like single cell organisms. You know, you often thought, like, what? This is my interpretation. I can't prove it right, but you can't prove it wrong. You know, Adam was there that day, right? He was there that day because it says in the Bible that Eve handed the fruit to her husband and he partaked. Like, they're right there. You know what? Adam was probably just looking at Eve's naked butt. Whew. But I want you to see this. It's very important. If you're married today and you don't know what your spouse's most valuable need is, what's on top of her list, you need to find out what it is. Because if Adam would have been engaging Eve in conversation, Satan would have not had the opportunity to take the place where Adam should have been fulfilling that need. Satan's like, I'll talk to you. You want to just talk? I'll talk to you. Want to talk about God? Let's talk about God. That's not the point. Her love bank was getting filled by something other than her husband, Adam. This is relational intelligence, relational maturity. If Adam would have stepped up and said, hey, man, that's awesome. You admire your wife's body. Why don't you have a conversation with her? Why don't you talk to her about the things of God? Why don't you step in there and fulfill the most valuable need she has, the need for conversation? Women, what if Eve would say, you know what, I ain't handling this tree, I'm going to handle my husband. Now you've got two people who are intentional about meeting each other's most valuable need, and as a byproduct, you shut the door in Satan's face and you run him out of your life. But if you don't even know, that's your homework. You better find out what it is, because if you're not meeting it, the enemy is. And it's, guys, it's not going to be the same as ours. Just not. That's not how they're wired. And what we'll do, let's see, I'm getting my pieces mixed up. We'll complain about what they're not, because they can never be all that. They're just most of that. And so it's 80-20. And then we'll find somebody else. Come on, when we do forfeit that, we'll find somebody else whose 20 is different than their 20 that fulfills my 20, and we'll leave our 80. And we'll chase a different 20. Maybe the 20 that the other person wasn't. See, this is how affairs, this is how marriage breaks down. But they're so dumbfounded they don't realize nobody's all that, right? Where's your Leah? Where's your Larry? Because you got one. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's their Larry, or there's their Leah. And you create the damaging cycle. And then you chase the little thing that they're not, and you sacrifice this relationship, this marriage, but you ain't figured out that everybody has a Leah and every Leon has a Larry. Here it is. And now they're a different 20. And then now you leave that. And a lot of our relationships have been whittled down to nothing because we step into them with unrealistic expectations. We step into them comparing ourselves amongst ourselves. We spend 80% of our time, our conversation, complaining about what they're not, instead of the solution, celebrating and being grateful for what they are. And now let me say that if that describes what you've been through, therefore there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. And we can step into relationships, we can step into marriages, not even knowing what the other person's greatest needs are. The third snare to be aware of, and we're going to get out of here, is the snare of improper priorities. You know, Leah wanted what Rachel had, and Rachel had what Leah wanted. Rachel was beautiful, but she was barren. She wanted children. She couldn't have children. Leah and her unsparkly eyes, every time Jacob got around Leah, like another one. Like it was 4-0. Leah had four kids, and Rachel had none, and she was upset. She was mad. And she was like, give me children, talking to Jacob. Just give me children. And Laban's response, he was angry, he was mad. And he said, am I in the place of God? Am I in the place of God? And there's so many of us that, let me say it like this is nicely, that we put things in the place where only God belongs. Idolatry is whenever you put something in the place where only God belongs. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a good thing. It could be a husband. It could be a wife. It could be your kids. I've seen so many people, like their kids is in the place, they rule the roost. That's not the right place. Idolatry is whenever you put anything in the place that only God belongs. And so many of us, we build our lives, like whether it's livelihood, my career, my finances, my 401k, my account, boom, and then I got my my kids, of course, it boom, and then you got all sorts of, then maybe my wife, and then like for real, then when everything's jacked up, you run to church and we put like God on top, that's 2 in a row. I practiced that at the house. Didn't even get it to balance like that one time. But the reality is because God is not in his proper place in your life. All it takes is a little. And the truth is your life and your relationships is like a relational game of Jenga. Because what we want to do is just throw God on top of our mess, like a cherry on top, to fix it. And we put so many things in the place that only God belongs. And it doesn't have to be bad things. It can be good things. It's just the improper place. The psalmist said, unless the Lord builds the house, it won't be established. And so the solution is God first. Like God first, above everything. Come on, God designed it this way. The snare is to put other things first, but the solution is to always have God first. He's the one that established the house. And so then the husband, my wife, come on, some of you parents, you got the kids in the wrong place. Let me just say this. Them kids are going to leave. I know. I told that one from the big one, I told her from the time she was a little girl. I was like, you can live with daddy forever. I was serious too. Like, you can live with me for as long as you want. You can live forever with us. You can. And our mama was crying, cleaning out her room. She left us, y'all. She just left him and just left us. Moved out. Didn't listen. Because that's the way your kids are good. You're going to leave. And so at the end of the day, it's me and you, boo. It's me and you. It's God, our marriage, our children. This y'all. Y'all there, but y'all just little, like, because ministry is not my mistress. But having the proper order, success, man. And if you're here today and, man, you've gone through some relationships, let me just say, therefore, there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. There's no guilt. There's no shame. But what I am saying is from this day forward, that you're armed with God's way of doing things, that no longer will you step into relationships, step into marriage without knowing who Leah and Larry is. Like you're not going to compare someone else's highlight to your behind the scenes. You're not going to forfeit what you do have, complaining about what you don't have. You got fajitas. They good. They the best fajitas in the world. Ain't nobody cook a better fajita and enchilada. I mean, I can't explain it to you. It's so good. It's so good. I don't even worry about pot roast. You still cooking that pot roast though? And just putting God first. And hey, listen, you've done that. It's the first day of the week. You're here. You didn't get distracted by the Super Bowl. It's rigged anyways. Taylor Swift's going to win it. But God has a plan, and he's got a purpose for relationships, and we have to have relational intelligence when we do step into it, to do it God's way, a biblical way. It doesn't mean things are easy. It just means that you're equipped with wisdom, understanding, and you're strengthened by God's Spirit to enjoy relationship because they dictate and determine the course and the quality of your life. Would you pray with me? Will you bow your heads? Maybe you're here today and maybe you hadn't put God as a priority. Maybe you're not in relation, like the most important relationship is the God relationship that you've been neglecting. And with no one looking around, the Bible says when we respond to God's goodness and faithfulness, it's the gospel. Maybe you're here today and you're like, I need Jesus. I need to be right. That's the first relationship. So I want to pray with you in this moment. No looking around. On the count of 3, just raise your hand and you're like, I need Jesus. If that's you this morning. 1, 2, 3. I see your hand. Hey, that's a good place to put your hands together right there. You can do that.